This is the story of a Nickelodeon movie that was buried for over 20 years and then finally resurfaced. This is the story of Crybaby Lane, with producer Bob Mittenhall and director Peter Lauer. Here's Peter Lauer to start our story.
What happened was, Bob Mittenthal and I had written a couple of things for Nickelodeon. And we both met on a show called The Adventures of Pete and Pete. He was a writer and I was a director. Then we started writing some stuff together. And at one point, Nickelodeon came to me and they asked me if I had any ideas for like a comedy horror movie, because they had been doing Are You Afraid of the Dark? And I guess that franchise was running out, or they were wrapping that up. Oh, and this is something in the vein of Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, but for kids. And I said, well, yeah, I do have a story, and I know this ghost story that I grew up with. It was like a local legend in Tontogany, Ohio, where I grew up, this little farm town. I told them this story of Crybaby Lane. The legend that my older brother Chris told me was that you would drive out, kids would drive out to this farmhouse outside of Tontogany, outside of Portage, Ohio, near Bowling Green. And there was this house. And if you got there at midnight, under this one tree, you could hear this dead baby cry Baby Lane. And, the idea was kind of spend the night there, And I never knew if he was bullshitting me or if it was semi-true or completely true. I never knew. And they were like, oh, that sounds great. And originally, it was going to be a approximately $10 million movie for Nickelodeon Paramount. And Bob and I wrote it up and pitched it back to Nickelodeon, or gave them the script. I can't remember the order sequence of events, but they didn't, I guess they passed on it. Yeah, they passed on it. Somebody at Paramount passed on it. It went all the way up to Paramount. Paramount passed on it.
Bob Mittenhall.
I guess Nickelodeon decided they wanted to do movies. And a woman that I had worked with when I was in the promo department, I first started out there. She was running the movie department. And so we made an arrangement to pitch it to her. And I swear to God, this is true. We were pitching it to her. Peter and I were telling her the story. And, someone comes to the office and she says, it says like, her daughter was on the phone. She had to take a phone call. And she leaves the room and she says, keep going. To keep telling the story, but there was no one else in the room. So, it's like, we'll tell it to each other. I mean, we know the story. It doesn't really seem like there was a real point to that. And so I think we felt like that wasn't really going to be, that wasn't a great pitch, I guess. We didn't really think we sold it. But surprisingly, I guess they wanted to, they were interested in it. And then, their interest kind of waned.
So a year or maybe 2 years went by, and I kind of forgot about it. And I guess in the meantime, Nickelodeon decided they wanted to do some sort of movies of the week, TV movies that they would air on Nickelodeon rather than theatrically. And somebody over there dug up our old script for Crybaby Lane and got in touch with me and said, would you be interested in doing this? And I said, sure. But the caveat was, rather than for $10 million, it's for like $800,000. And don't lose any of the set pieces. And like an idiot, I said yes. And then that was the start of it.
I think there were some concerns that it was too dark, and I mean, I think Peter wanted to do it in black and white, and they said no. In terms of the script, I don't really remember. I think they liked the script for the most part. I think they were probably like, obviously specific stuff, little things they want to change here and there. The real thing is, the real issue was the production issue. And I'm sure Peter talked about this, but they said the one stipulation that we needed to, the one thing we needed to do to get it made was we had to get a star to play the Undertaker. We only had like $1 million to make a movie, and stars want star money. It's like, it was going to be at least like 10% of the budget just for one role, and it wasn't even really that giant a role. It wasn't like, the kids were the stars of the movies, and, we got nobodies to be the kids, but they really wanted us to get a name that could sort of like help get press about the movie, et cetera, et cetera. We found it difficult to do that. We wanted Tom Waits to do it.
Originally, I wanted, kind of sounds pretty pie in the sky, but I wanted Tom Waits for that part. I just always imagined Tom Waits in that part. I thought it would have been wonderful, and he would have been. I wrote a letter to him, just very flattering, and explained to him why I thought he would be perfect for it. And his manager responded very positively. And this could have just been dusting me off, but ultimately he was on tour when we would have needed him, and that was the excuse for not doing it. But there, of course, it could have been another reason.
And we were basically starting production without anybody in the role. And with, it's like, you better get somebody, or we're going to shut you down. And that was a hell of a lot of pressure, which I didn't manage very well. We were doing a rehearsal, like a read through with the kids, and I came into the office where we were doing it, and I sort of like wondered, why are all the lights flickering in here? And I think I asked them, I said, the lights aren't flickering in here. What are you talking about? And then 15 minutes later, I just was just floored with this headache, and I was just like, oh my God. I didn't realize then that was like a kind of a symptom of migraine. I just thought there was something really wrong with me. I wasn't going to say anything about it. And then the first night of production, when we were still like, Bob, where's the star? Did you sign somebody yet? And I'm like, yeah, we're working on it. The same thing happened, and I very quietly went to the production office, and I said, is there a PA who can take me to the hospital? They're like, what's going on? I was like, I think I'm having an aneurysm or something. I don't know. And just don't tell anybody. Don't make a big deal of it. Just let's just go. And I don't want to die on the set. That'd be bad. So yeah, I basically missed the first night of production. We were shooting in a cornfield in South Jersey. Basically kind of going all night. And I think at one point, Peter might have said, hey, where's Bob? Nobody knew. And so he said, oh yeah, he's in the hospital. I was like, okay. But I think I was fine. I mean, they just said, that sounds like a migraine.
And then Nickelodeon at the last, I think we had already started shooting, and Nickelodeon forwarded Frank Langella's name and said, we want you to cast Frank Langella. So I said, well, let me meet with him. And I went over and I met with Frank at his apartment. He said to me, I have no idea how to play this character. I proceeded to try and explain the character to him, which is not a good way to go about things, but I was too stupid at the time to know any better. And because the character was based on my uncle, and so I just tried to explain the character, and it never helped him. But he did it.
But I think he just wanted the money. I think we're going to pay him $100,000 or something like that for 5 days of work. And he got to stay in a special hotel that we were all staying in a Days Inn. He got the fancy hotel and still complained about it. He didn't like the little shampoo bottles. It was very upsetting to him. We were thrilled by it because he was even at that point he was a legendary actor, and he was definitely game to do, to bring to it sort of whatever we wanted to. I don't think he was overly well prepared. I hope I'm not speaking out of school. I hope he doesn't hear this and get them come after me. I was totally prepared. I don't think he knew his lines. I think in the scenes with the kids were like feeding him his lines. But it doesn't really show up on film.
He did the movie. Ultimately, Nickelodeon said, do it with Frank, or we're not going to go forward with the film. So I kind of had no choice. And their reasoning, Nickelodeon's reasoning, which was so bizarre, was they wanted Frank Langella because they wanted the press attention that would come along with. They wanted E.T., Entertainment Tonight, to be on set. Well, when all was said and done, not only did E.T. not come to the set, but Nickelodeon magazine never even came to the set. So Frank Langella, achieved absolutely nothing promotion-wise for this movie, because of course the audience couldn't care less. They wouldn't, the audience for this film doesn't know who Frank Langella is. I don't know. They just thought that the name would get somebody there to do some kind of a story about it, and not even Nickelodeon magazine came, which is just ridiculous. So there was that, and Frank is obviously he's a great actor, and I have tremendous respect for him. but he was wrong he wasn't the right guy for this part. Or I would say that's not actually true. I was the wrong director to help him become the right guy for this part, and he was the wrong actor to help me find the right performance of this character. It just wasn't the right combination. I really liked him. He was a great storyteller and very funny, but it just wasn't the right. We could have done better for the character, but our hands were tied. Well, see, I was in New York prepping this thing, and we just didn't have the money to travel to Ohio and shoot it on that location. So we found, by hook or by crook, skin of our teeth, we cobbled together the world's least expensive locations to shoot this thing. When we got to the end of it, like, man, we just need the farm towns in New Jersey just do not look like Ohio farm towns. They're just totally different layout, different architecture. We managed to get the okay to shoot 2 days with a skeleton crew, to shoot 2 days on location back in my hometown, Tontogany. But I had to find the right kind of farmhouse, and we couldn't afford to fly there and location scout. So I called my sister, who was living in Toledo. I said, look, will you mind driving around up there on Tontogany for me and just see if you can find something that looks like this? And I sent her some examples. I faxed her some examples of farmhouses. There used to be a bunch of abandoned farmhouses out there in the countryside, overgrown, and probably still are. So my sister Carolyn drove out in her minivan, I believe, with one of her babies in a car seat in the back, and she's just driving around. And she apparently came upon a place that was interesting, because she called me or faxed me and said, I found your house. And she faxed me a picture, and it was perfect. That's great. It's perfect. And then we spoke, and she said, I got to tell you, it freaked me out. I'm like, why? What do you mean? She said, well, I pulled up this, the remnants of the dirt driveway or gravel, and I got out of my car and I walked up to take a picture, and I just got a chill down my spine. And I took the picture, and I got back to my car, and I got out of there. I said, that's interesting. So flash forward to, we arrived there with our little crew to film in Tontogany. Tontogany is basically just a crossroads of smattering of houses, 320 people. 320 people then, 320 people now. Anyway, so we're waiting for all the crew to gather, and I'm hanging out in the corner carryout where they have a lunch counter where I used to hang out when I was a kid. And I'm talking to a woman behind the counter, and she's like, what are you guys doing here? I'm like, well, we're shooting up some footage for this movie that we're making. It's called Crybaby Lane. She said, oh yeah, Crybaby Lane. Yeah. Like, oh, are you familiar with that? She goes, yeah. It's out there. It's out there by Portage. I'm like, yeah, that's where the house that we found is. And she's like, well, where is it? I described where it was on Portage Road, I think, and she's like, yeah, that's the house. So it was by coincidence or fate, my sister apparently found the house that was the house, and that's where we filmed.
Saturday, Nickelodeon brings you its first ever Halloween movie for television. Crybaby Lane, Saturday at 9, 8 Central in a special Halloween snick.
Yeah, it's interesting. There were some mixed messages from Nickelodeon throughout the process. And if you speak to Bob, he can speak much more clearly to this, because Bob worked for Nickelodeon. He was kind of inside at Nickelodeon. I was definitely an outsider, and Bob was almost like my liaison. I think Bob played interference between Nickelodeon. I think he protected Nickelodeon from me and me from Nickelodeon. He knows what was the inner workings that was going on at Nickelodeon better than I do.
They were definitely concerned about how dark it was, like literally, that just like the exposure, because Peter had wanted to do a black and white movie, and he wanted to make a really dark movie, a really dark comedy, not a kid's show. And that was very much against, the kind of poppy candy, green slime that Nickelodeon always wanted to be. And they kept wanting to brighten it up. And that was a lot of push and pull. But ultimately, John Inwood was the director of photography. and Peter was the director, and they were the ones, actually like putting the film in the camera and opening up the aperture. So they were going to do what they were going to do. They wanted a real specific visual tell for the audience when someone was kind of possessed by the spirit, and it's just like the hackiest thing to have, like, make their eyes glow. And it's like, and we really didn't want to do it, and they just made us do it. And I guess it worked, but I think he was ever happy about that. He didn't ever want anybody to really know. It's just like he wanted the behavior to be unexpected and have everybody be kind of on the edge of their seats. Is this person affected by this evil force, or aren't they? So that was a big fight that kind of went all the way through post. Everything is very kind of compartmentalized there. So like the programming people, don't really look at the shows. It's like the production and development people make the shows, and the programming people schedule the shows. And there's probably people at the very top who like will watch it and say, like, yeah, but this is great, but they don't see everything. And they rely on, the president of Nickelodeon, the general manager, was like relying on, his production people to make stuff that like was going to go on the air. And so our boss was, probably not 100% happy with it, but, happy enough to he thought that it ticked enough of the boxes to put it on. And so they did. And, I think they were, surprised at the backlash. I think then, it's like then the sort of programming people start looking at it and be like, well, yeah, why are you surprised that we got like calls about this? It's fucking scary, and it's like, yeah, maybe we shouldn't air this anymore.
Yeah, it was interesting. Yeah, Are You Afraid of the Dark had a couple of really, you could arguably went further than we did a couple of times. Maybe we weren't playing it quite as wacky, and we were playing it pretty grounded for the most part. And maybe that tonal difference was made it, give it a darker patina. I do remember that they wanted it to be funny, and I thought it was. And they also wanted it to be scary. They wanted genuine scares. So we tried to balance that in the shooting of it and in the writing of it. But then when it came down to it, they also kind of held me back a lot. There was one thing in particular, like at the end of this movie, you wind up down under the earth or in the womb. It's kind of a womb-like environment in this rotten womb, and the main character meets the evil twin. And the evil twin, my original design for the evil twin was that it would be the the head of an old withered man on the body of a fetus. And I thought that was pretty cool because it was like, it's because it's a womb, and it was, they saw the twins in half when they were just babies, and the wrong twin went into the grave, but he continued to kind of age. The head continued to age, and I thought that would be pretty cool and creepy. And Nickelodeon said, no, you can't do that. So I did it this other way, kind of like based on a Cramps album cover, and then 10 years or so later, lo and behold, Harry Potter did almost the exact same thing when they revealed at the end of one of the last ones of a train station platform. They revealed a withered fetus of Voldemort or something like that, and everybody loved it. They could have loved it. They could have loved that on Nickelodeon 10 years earlier. But also, when it aired, they got a lot of complaints. They debuted it on Halloween night, and it was Sabrina the Teenage Witch, whoever that actress was, I can't remember her name. Yeah, she sort of introduced it as an introduction for it. And then this movie plays, and the kids who were watching it, I don't think the kids minded it so much, but their parents got freaked out. And I think Nickelodeon got enough complaints that they just pulled it and disavowed it and tried to bury it. That one, I think it was beyond the pale for them, and they just would rather it not have existed. Or maybe they just thought it was crappy. I don't know, but I think it was because of the complaints they got, because they wouldn't even admit they ever made it. when the internet campaign developed years later, when the kids who saw it that one night got older and social media had happened, people started wondering, this audience started wondering, whatever, did anybody else ever see that movie on Nickelodeon, that freaky movie? And this conversation began, and all of a sudden there was like, yeah, whatever happened to that? And then Nickelodeon started getting calls, and they were telling people who were calling about Crybaby Lane that, nope, we don't know anything about it. And this of course fueled the fire to find this lost film. And ultimately it worked because Nickelodeon was kind of pressured to actually re-air it again years later, like 20 years later.